All along the south coast of England, troops and equipment were loaded onto ships for the Allied invasion of Europe. After years of secret planning, 3 million men were ready to take part in the largest amphibious invasion ever, Operation Overlord. Many of the soldiers had never seen action before. The diary of American Staff Sergeant Henry Giles.
The whole outfit now has a very bad case of the invasion shakes. Very little talk about anything but assault landings and what the casualties will be. Any way you look at it, it's not going to be a piece of cake. Caught myself wondering for the 100th time how the hell I got here. What the hell I'm doing here. Me, Henry Giles, an old farm boy from Kentucky. For the first time in years, my uniform doesn't seem to fit. A little too tight.
Hugh Bone of the 2nd East Yorkshire Regiment knew this was the real thing.
No question about D-Day and H-hour now. Only the 24-hour prior confirmation to come, and the issue of the real maps in place of the bogus ones. Then we learned there was to be a 24-hour postponement because the weather was so bad.
D-Day would now be Tuesday, the 6th of June. Most of the men had already been cooped up aboard their ships for 3 days. Soldiers and sailors relieved the tension any way they could. Many wrote letters home.
When the invasion starts, you may not hear from me for some time. There's no use kidding you. When we go in, it'll be rough. But I'm sure we can do our part. I'll write every chance I get. In the meantime, take care of yourself and write often. Love, from your son.
The next morning, the Allies bombarded the Normandy coast. Waiting to go ashore was Sergeant Keller of the Devonshire Regiment.
When we were about 200 yards from our landing point, I could see heavy machine gun bullets cutting up the sand and making a noise like a huge swarm of bees. I thought, my God, we're going to be slaughtered.
Under the command of General Eisenhower, Allied naval forces began landing Allied armies on the northern coast of France.
Canadian Charles Martin had landed on the beach codenamed Juno.
A moment came when some reality sank in about all the things that had happened. It hurt. We learned that half of our original company, those I joined up with in June of 1940, had been killed or wounded. The tears came. So many had been lost.
U.S. Army cameramen, amongst them Hollywood director George Stevens, filmed the D-Day beaches, where 2,500 Allied troops had died. But the invasion had been a great success. By the end of June, 1 million men were ashore. More difficult than expected was the Allied advance through Normandy. William Preston was a corporal with an American tank battalion.
Dearest Phil, the battle of the hedgerows continues as near to jungle fighting as anything I can think of. The small open field surrounded by thick bushes and trees are only traps for the unwary. It makes advancing agonizingly slow, nor do I ever feel more like a goldfish in his bowl than when we advance across these fields from hedgerow to hedgerow. Much love, Bill.
Gradually, the Allies wore down an increasingly exhausted German army. In the first month, 90,000 were captured. A young corporal wrote to his wife.
I wonder what will become of us. I don't think I shall ever see my home again. But we are fighting for Germany and our children, and what happens to us matters not. I close with the hope that a miracle will happen soon.
Allied victory was proving expensive. Over 36,000 troops dead. Many of the veterans were tired of fighting. U.S. First Lieutenant Howard Bradford had already served in North Africa and Sicily.
Dear Dad, never before have I felt so low. I'm sure that it can't last much longer. We have paid a heavy price. I know I shouldn't write like this, but there's nothing else to say. I'm so sick of war that sometimes I feel that I'm losing my mind. It's been very hard, but the damn thing can't last forever. Not for me, it can't. All my friends are gone now. I'm a stranger in my own battalion. I shall try and do better in my next letter. Howard.
2 weeks later, Howard Bradford was killed. When the fighting stopped, his friend Dennis Lowe wrote to Howard's parents.
It seems such a shame that Howard had to be taken so near the end of this trial. I feel that I sort of know you and all the Bradford family, as Howard spoke of you constantly. We were being shelled all the time, and we read each other's mail to keep from going mad. Howard never knew what hit him and died before we could get him to an aid station. He was in no pain and left this world as he wanted to, doing his duty, looking after the needs of the men.
Two months after the Normandy landings, there was a second D-Day on the Mediterranean coast near Cannes. After very little resistance, 94,000 men and 11,000 vehicles advanced inland. Fighting alongside the Americans and General de Gaulle's Free French troops were the resistance. Georges Fidel witnessed their pride and determination.
The battle started, a fight to the death, as the people understood that the liberty of their town depended on it. In all the main roads, gunshots cracked and grenades exploded. You could see the young people, virtually children, some of them barely 16 years old, waving in their hands revolvers. The experienced older men, although past 50 years old, were armed with machine guns, fighting on street corners.
As the defeated Germans were rounded up, the Free French went after thousands of suspected collaborators. Georges Fidel described one vengeful attack.
3 collaborators were apprehended, and the crowd seized them immediately. Their hate against the traitors was so strong that they forgot their orders and put aside all humane feelings and punished the criminals there and then. 2 of them were hanged, The third was shot at and endured 20 minutes of the crowd's fury. What happened to the body is indescribable. All sorts of disgusting things, the spitting, the scrapings, the blows showering on the skin until the body was taken away.
Nous nous aimions bien tendrement, comme